Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. We're live here on assignment in Boulder, Colorado. Beautiful, sweltering Boulder, Colorado.
It is hot.
Joined today by a gifted musician, someone who's blazing her own trail, Cass Clayton. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Good to be here.
I want you to tell the people about the evolution of the blues and the kind of blues that you have been playing on your new album. Some people wouldn't call it traditional blues, but it's your version of the blues, and I want you to talk about the evolution of the blues as it relates to Cass Clayton.
You always ask such great questions that nobody's ever asked before, and that is, so I grew up listening to really old school blues, Chicago blues, swampy blues, everything. My dad was obsessed with music, blues and jazz in particular, and all the classics, B.B. King, and I love the contemporary blues musicians who have kind of gone and done their own thing, like Bonnie Raitt, Susan Tedeschi, but I like all that old stuff, like Coco Taylor. That's what I listened to my whole life, and what I started to find as I started to sing covers is that, some of those songs I love them, but I couldn't sing all of them authentically because it's not my story. So when I was beginning to write this album,
what's the name of the album, by the way?
It's called Cass Clayton Band, self-titled.
Really? Yeah, straight ahead.
Yeah. So I wanted the songs to say something that was real about my life, and they weren't fitting into a tight blues format, and I started to feel like that's okay because a genre has to stretch. You have to find yourself in it. You have to be who you are, and the song often tells you what it wants to be, and so you're not even really making all those choices yourself. And then you add in another few musicians, and their magic comes through. Any person who comes into that room is going to change the music just a little bit until it's something that's really its own thing. And I think there's blues foundationally in all the music, even if it sounds sometimes funky or singer-songwritery, or that's a word, right? If it's soul, for me, that's the blues underlying. It's informing everything because that's my vocabulary.
Well, I'm getting sunburn on my neck right now. I never thought I'd get to Boulder and get sunburned, but coming from Tucson. But the cats you grew up on, they were singing their lives.
That's exactly right.
That was what they were living. And it's hard to play the blues or evolve on the blues when you're living in suburbia. And I'm not saying you are living in suburbia. It's like a lot of younger cats.
I am. Yeah.
A lot of younger cats are living in suburbia where these guys were just singing, getting high on nickels and dimes. So, I mean, could you talk about a part of you in one of the songs on this new album, how you put your own story in a song?
So I think one of the things that I've always been fascinated with in blues specifically is those double entendres, the sexual freedom in the blues. Growing up as in a Baptist church and all that stuff like I did, I think you're not allowed to really explore that as a white female sometimes in our country, and that's changing, of course.
The sexualization is more repressed?
I think it is. There's a certain way we behave, and that's okay, but the music, the blues tradition frees people from that, and that's one of the things that sucked me in really early, because I knew where I was kind of oppressed even as a young person. And so one of the songs is about temptation, what happens when you fall into temptation. It's a sexy song. I'm singing actually through a Leslie, which is a rotating speaker that's
Normally they play a Fender Rhodes or a Hammond B3 through that, but
That's right.
actually your voice is going through that.
Yeah, and so it's not a song that's about having, belting, show-offy vocals. Those are fun too, but it's really, that song just came out, and a lot of it's because of the way Taylor Scott produced it. Is this dark, moody song. You don't know the me I used to be before I made this big, huge mistake. That's really what it's about, and that's the modern day blues song. I mean, everybody's done something or almost done something. Everybody can identify with that song. If they haven't, then maybe that might be their next move. They probably should.
Right.
Do something almost wrong. You don't have to take it all the way, but I think that's that was the fight between the gospel and the blues. The blues was the devil's music, and gospel.
It came out of the sanctified church. Did you have a chance to go to a sanctified church ever?
No.
Where the Holy Rollers and the
no.
Yeah, I mean
our Baptist church wasn't like that. It was very Midwestern.
I know your Baptist church wasn't, but it was just there was the blues did that. That's one of the things. John Hendricks, rest in peace, the great singer. He did a whole play called Evolution of the Blues, and it was on Broadway in San Francisco for a long time, and it was a reminder in a very poetic, theatrical way that in fact the blues came out of the church. Whether the church wanted to acknowledge that or not is an entirely different story. But
like Mississippi John Hurt, one of my favorite musicians, he's fighting that within himself the whole time. He's got these beautiful, pretty songs, and then you listen to the lyrics and they're so heartbreaking and violent, and he had a real struggle. So I'm not going to sing that song. That's not my struggle. That was his struggle, and that's why the blues has to evolve. You can't sing somebody else's version of the blues. And as I love those songs, I can always find a piece of myself in any song, but that doesn't mean I feel like it's appropriate for me to sing it.
It's very well put. I mean, how have you evolved on the bandstand in terms of your comfortability as an entertainer? I mean, we've been talking off air about sort of like the stage presence that you need to hold and the sort of entertainment that's involved, but then kind of having to be a chameleon as well once things are done. And sort of sometimes people in the audience don't always get that. But my point is, in your mind, what have you grown the most in as it relates to bandstand and entertainment prowess? Being able to hold your space there.
Wow. Well.
Or what are you still trying to?
I was terrified of being on stage. I never wanted to.
First
be on
gig, you
stage.
didn't invite anybody to your gig.
No, and my husband showed up, and two very, very close friends showed up. And there were people in the club, but it was the right thing to do because I just needed to get my footing and, understand what is this about and can I do this and not pass out.
Right.
So this is only 4 years ago. And so as soon as I did it a couple times, I realized right away that people are so kind, They're not looking to judge. They're just coming out for entertainment, coming out to have a good time. Just like if I went out, I would find things that I like about that band, even if it wasn't my kind of music. I would find I'm there to have fun, so I'm going to like you. I'm going to make that decision. And I think the other thing that I realized is that people don't have their ears on you every single second. So it's safe to take a risk. So I take a lot more risks now than I used to. I talk a lot, to connect with people, because I really think that ultimately the only reason we do this is to connect, and we all have a different way of connecting spiritually. Mine happens to be music right now, but you and I talked earlier, I used to teach meditation classes, and that was another way to connect. Probably not my ultimate way. Music came naturally, and I don't want to say anything's easy, because if you want to do it right, it's not. You've just got to put a tremendous amount of time in it. But
I mean, you're
stage,
rock.
I feel free now. I feel really free.
You feel free?
Yeah.
That's just fantastic. I mean, what would be your advice to people about doing the reverse route? I mean, you are a spirit, you're a woman, but you are a spirit child, and you've been somebody who, you know, you've lived in ashrams, you've lived a spiritual life, and now you've taken on the harness of, you know, there's only two letters that separate magic and music, so you're taking on a new spiritual plane. So, but you've done it reverse. You didn't start it. So, talk about to people out there that are looking for a cathartic experience. They probably know they have natural gifts, but they're inhibited like you were on your first gig. What would be your advice to them about doing things the reverse way?
Yeah, I mean, there's no wrong way to do your
for
life.
you, yeah, your own personal experience. Just you personalize it. How has it been for you?
So doing it the opposite way, and when I say opposite, there's a traditional way that people do spirituality in the East. And so you're a householder, which means you're a married person, you have your kids and you raise them, and then at the end of your life, you go on these spiritual journeys. And in India, it's even permissible to leave your family to do that. And so I started my life off doing those things first, and living in an ashram and focusing spiritually. And now I know doing this, that for me, that was essential to me, because the music for me has to be about that. It has to be about spiritual connection. And if I'm not grounded, the music doesn't say what I intended it to say. It's not true. It doesn't connect with people. And it's ultimately, it's a way of loving people. Mm-hmm. And there's so many ways to do that. You know, there's so many ways to love people. And there's so many types of love. It's infinite. You can be a friend. You can be, you can be a lover. You can have unconditional love for somebody. I was lucky in my life. I really felt like I had unconditional love for my grandmother. Long before I understood the concept of unconditional love.
It's really funny you said that, because Wayne Shorter, the great horn player, said to Stanley Clark one night, bass player, told me in one of our interviews that they had a few drinks, but Wayne said, if you really want to play spiritual music, it's like going to the store to get your grandmother some milk. It's the unconditional. That's what Wayne Shorter said. Now, he had a couple of drinks, but it's just what you just said. It's this. It's not. I'm going to do it because I'm supposed to do it, or because it's just this unconditional feeling of saying, I'm going to do this for I'm going to go to the store to get my grandma's. That's what he said. So this unconditional thing, and that on the bands, that unconditional. I mean, I guess the bottom line is that it's about acceptance, and if you show liberation on the bandstand, you're going to make people that might feel disenfranchised or have had a bad day, you can wash away the dust of their everyday life up there through that acceptance. And I think that's the unconditional stuff, the unconditional love that you're talking about.
It is. I have, for whatever reason, I have this tendency to gravitate toward people who have something, and especially at shows, who are there to heal something, that are people who are really struggling. You know, if we have a homeless person who walks in the show, I always make sure I go and talk to them. If somebody's on a drug and they seem like they've got a real problem with that drug, as long as they're safe, I go and I take their hand and I say, hey, I hope you're having fun. Because people are there for connection. And a lot of times the people who are the least connected are ignored by our culture, and music doesn't ignore people. It doesn't. And the musicians I know, they have some very funny, quirky experiences, because music draws everyone in. Nobody is excluded from it. And, you have people who come in clubs who may even, they might be alcoholics. I love them all. Yeah. I mean, I really, really do feel genuine, sisterly, kind love toward people. And
did that come from your spiritual evolution, as opposed to if you had gotten your start on the bandstand when you were younger and maybe a little more full of yourself, you might have not been so accepting of those people that we ignore? I
think it's more my own struggles with, early on, with just not liking who I was and being so insecure, that I really understand what it feels like to not fit. And when I'm reaching out to somebody else, I'm probably really reaching out to myself too. And we're all so connected. We share, everybody has a soul. Every tree has a soul. Everything has a soul. Everything has a mind. Everything has a heart. And on this planet, everything has physicality. But most of the good stuff is invisible. Like just an intention that this person has a good night and that they're safe and they get home safely. That's enough. It's invisible, but it maybe is bigger. The infinitely small things are much bigger than the things that we as humans deem as important. And that's, I think the funny thing about doing music at this stage is that it looks big, but really the stuff that I care about it's all invisible.
Like what?
Intending for the music to touch somebody's soul and help them in any way. Intending for somebody to feel safe around me. It's the kindness, and I really don't judge people for anything. I mean, I've done some really stupid stuff, and
actually, you're more self-critical than judgmental of anybody. You're mercilessly self-critical.
I'm definitely self-critical because I know I can do better, and it's my job to get better. Just like it's all of our duty to do our best for ourselves and to evolve. But and the music it's a big lesson for me. It's just full of lessons all the time. It's like having a kid. Kids are great teachers. Music is a great teacher. If you want to know what you're feeling, sit down and try to write a song, and pretty soon the thing that you really didn't want to write is going to creep out of you. Like, hello, I'm here. Would you like to deal with me today or next year?
You talk about the creative process for you. How germs of songs come to you, and then how you piece them together to make something that works. I mean, does it all just flow out at one time, or are there bits and pieces? Like, what is your creative process?
I wish I could say that it always comes in,
No.
like this download. I think there are a few people for whom that happens, and I'm completely hoping that happens for me someday. But usually, I have had that happen on 2 different occasions. One song came very, very quickly on this current album. Generally, it's this observation, or, in the middle of the night, getting 2 lines that are great, or hearing somebody say something that's a great hook. I was in a restaurant, and this woman was talking to somebody and said that she had accidentally shot her husband 7 times. And I was just like, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. That's gotta go in a song.
I shot my husband 7 times.
Accidentally. Like, yeah. I can see once or twice, maybe.
Right, so you pick up, there's like, it's like...
things become part of the story later.
Yeah.
And in that case, that became, I didn't tell it quite that way, but in the song about gossip that I wrote, it's about how people love to hear these tragic stories. I don't know why, it's human nature.
It's also the blues.
And it's the blues.
Some people would say that they had a calling to do what they are doing. Mm-hmm. That it was in their blood. It was the only thing they knew how to do. I mean, you were steeped in like a lot of culture and music and obsessive, through your dad and whatnot. But at this point, if you didn't have music in your life, would your soul die?
No, I'm sure of that. I mean, it's just like the same question, if I got hit by a car and became a quadriplegic suddenly, would my soul die? No. The music is one way to express your soul's, contentment, longing, blockages, your heart's desires. But it's just one way, and we go on forever in my belief system. So,
but if somebody took away your ability to sing or to play...
It would be so incredibly painful. I mean, I would be devastated. But if that happened...
You would find a way to make it work. But,
yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't want that to happen. It would be devastating, and I think I would feel sad and empty for a long time. But eventually, I would find a way to be grateful for it.
I guess that leads into my, we got the dogs here again, but to get to where you need to go for the next level of your career, are you willing to lay it all on, where are you at right now in your career that you can share with the public? You've been doing prolific work here in Boulder and the general Colorado area.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is the calling that intense right now with all your facilities that you're willing to take it to the limit? And now, what is the next step for Cass Clayton?
Yeah, that's the question that started coming up about the time that Taylor and I were writing this album, and we, I've had many of these discussions with Taylor, but also with Jeff Gray, who owns Far and Away Studios, where we produced this album, because he's heavily invested as a contributor to the album and as a friend, and has been with me every step of the way, really asking some of those same questions. What's next? And it's one of the reasons we formed Cass Clayton Band, because I needed to be able to do this music in a way that felt authentic to me. So we needed to find a band that could express it that way, and I think that's still evolving. And I can't imagine not going to the next step. It just is always kind of, I won't say dragging me, but because I am always the greenest person in the room, I'm always the newest one doing this, almost always. It's a massive fast track of learning. Like, I'm always drinking through a fire hose. I'm always learning so much.
But
I'm ready always to go to the next step. In fact, I've always, I feel like I've got one foot out the door into whatever's next. I just don't know how it'll express itself yet.
Aside from the confidants and the people that have been instrumental in helping you put your albums together, what does your intuition tell you about where you are going?
Wow. Well, my intuition in the very, very beginning was, I always saw, a really connected audience, and I saw myself traveling. It's hard to justify that sometimes. I've got a family, this is something that when you have this kind of, you've chosen this kind of, I don't even want to call it a job. It is a job, but it feels, I always get the giggles when I say work because I love it so much. But I think that... Assuming that stays in place, what are these dreams about traveling and taking the music out that you have? I want to be able to connect with more people on it, and just for the pure joy of it. I think that's what I came to do, and we'll see, time will tell, but I really feel that the logical next place to go, and also the way I'm being pulled and what I see internally is just, reaching out to broader audiences and taking it, on the road a little bit, and that's...
But playing at the right venues,
right?
You don't want to be in some upholstered sewer for 2 weeks. Like
we've all been there, done that. Even only having done this for 4 years, I've done a lot of bar gigs, and they're really, really fun, and I'll continue to do them. It's just, you don't leave your town and start.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
You were talking to somebody, Cass Clayton, who's you moved around a lot. You became a prolific grant writer. You became the vice president of Colorado Ballet.
Vice president of marketing and development. Yeah.
Something tells me that you get to a point where you reach a level of success, things become too easy, and then you move on to something that's more challenging in your creative and your livelihood.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be able to settle for where you're at right now.
I don't think I'll ever be able to settle for anything.
Right. Well, I think that's
But no, that's a really interesting observation, because this restlessness is something, I have every day. I sit down and I meditate from, either 5 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever I can do. And that, I know that well of peace is within me, but my nature, just whatever you want to call it, is restless. And I always want to learn the next thing. I want to get better. luckily, this is the kind of thing you can get infinitely better at. You know, there's just no end to music. There's no end to the learning. There's no end to the collaborations, and the people who I've met are so interesting. And I connect so much more with the music community than I've ever connected with any other community. Outside of perhaps the spiritual community, but it's so different there because then that's, you know, more quiet, contemplative.
Yeah, also you were part of the yogic ashram that was more service to humanity. Mm-hmm. So it was more, somewhat more jovial and so...
boisterous.
That'd be a good word.
Lots of energy there. It's not like a place where people go to be silent for 2 weeks. And I mean, people can choose to do that, and I've seen them do it. But it's a place where service to humanity is kind of central. So it's a bustling, energetic ashram where people are just being themselves and learning to work in a community. And I think one of the things that's similar between the ashram life and being the householder life, you know, being a wife, a mother, and the music life is that you learn community. You put other people first. Sometimes there are times when it's really important to rock the boat, and there are many, many more times where you just got to keep your ego in check and just let it go. And those are things that communities teach you, that it's not really about you. And I think we all, like, we're in a social media world where everybody's post, you know, you get a bunch of likes, and it does bring people together in community. But
well, you hope it's a dynamic thing where there's like people that are commenting, debating, or most importantly, I mean, like I said,
hopefully with kindness.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that is most inspiring, is just how kind you are. And I just would like you to wrap up, just talk about, you know, in the time that we're in now as a culture, how you continue to bring love to your world, Cass.
Well, I mean, I mess up all the time. I want to preface it by...
Don't preface it like that.
Saying that I have to own that, you know, I'm extremely flawed, and I've made a lot of mistakes just in the last month that are, you know, not very loving, but, you know, I'm yell at my kid if she doesn't get ready on time, all that good stuff.
But you're also in a restless mode right now because your nature's pushing you out.
That's true. And that's, you know, when the pressure's on and you've got a lot of new responsibility, and, you know, now with a new band I feel responsible and I care for all of these people a lot and I want them to do well. And, you know, I'm watching Taylor's band go off and do really, really well and break out, and they deserve to do that. And that is, you know, what I hope most musicians do is when somebody else has success, you know, be like really... Sorry. No worries, we love dogs. Got some friends there. You want everybody to do well. Like when one person does well, that means that this is possible. If you work hard enough and you're good, that you can do well and spread this. I mean, honestly, my underlying message is of kindness and love, and it's, you know, it's something that I focus on every day, and when I mess up, I call myself on it, and I'm learning. But I think the music gives me a chance to meet more people and test that out.
If something comes your way that is going to help you elevate to the next level, and you can't be kind to everybody, are you going to be able to deal with that?
I can always choose kindness.
There's plenty of examples of people that grew up with bands. They had poet writers who helped them make hit songs, and then the minute they got into a recording contract, the record company wanted them to record with a certain band. They had to square that circle. And for you are unmercilessly kind to all the people that have positively impacted you. So, is there something that sometimes I often wonder in my career too, on my journey, like I say I could do that, I could raise my game to the next level, but I don't really want to, or it's too easy in my mind. But in fact, I look at it and I say, maybe I'm just afraid of success.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. And I ask you about that, where you're at now.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you've already been successful musically, or do you feel like part of you is also afraid of what success could mean.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is how you define success. You and I have kind of talked about that before, because there are a lot of ways to define it. And
I'm talking about like a prolific livelihood, sustainable, and it's consuming all of your time. And you have
yeah,
become
I would say it definitely is taking virtually all my time right now. But mainly because I do everything, and
Right.
every local band person is, in a very similar boat, or virtually all of them. You do all your promotion, you do your press releases, your posters, your outreach to radio stations, you write your music, you go recruit band members. There's just, if you're the one heading things up, then you've got a pretty busy thing in front of you. And so I think success for me would be to be able to focus more on the music and get some help in some areas that are maybe not where my energy is best used.
Or you can use
would
that. You
allow
can
me
use your
to-
energy in the areas that are needed more.
Yeah, because right now, I mean, in this community, and people have been incredibly accepting. I mean, a dear friend of mine, Jessica Rogalski and Mojo Mama, and a bunch of women who I was in a band with, that was
The
called
the
Harmonious.
9-woman band.
The 9-woman band, Harmonious. I mean, that could have been really catty, and it wasn't. Those women were amazing and still are. They're all friends of mine. So, I mean, I think in a way, like, I feel successful locally because of them. They accepted me.
Absolutely.
They love what I'm doing. I love what they're doing. It feels like we've all grown our audiences. All of us have had some measure of growth. And also with my original band, which was Hogback Blues Band, now called CC and the Riders, those guys, I mean, they taught me how to use a microphone. Talk about patience. I mean, Dan Burke is the lead guitarist there, and I mean, he has spent countless hours just teaching me subtle things to trust, dynamics and, microphone dynamics, because I've got a loud voice, and so I need to pull off that mic. And those things that a lot of times people have to learn on their own. I didn't have time to do that. I just jumped in, and they taught me everything. Like, in the span of a year, they had pretty much spent as much energy as they could getting me up to speed so that I could be expressing myself, and really focused more on expressing myself than on the details of...
Well, and you never forget
No.
where you came from.
No.
It'll be
These guys are
really
amazing.
fascinating to see your evolution, and I feel very blessed to know you. So thank you,
I
Cass.
feel the same way. Thank you, Jake. Appreciate
We're
it.
back tomorrow on the Jake Feinberg Show. Thank you for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Thank you.